in Japan, they show those scenes of cherry trees when they blossom, and they're just gorgeous. You just see thousands of them. It's amazing, right? And I think he really wanted to create that scene here. He liked to refer to himself as Grandpa Cherry Blossom.
He's a serious negotiating businessman, but he also, throughout his life, was always donating flowers and plants and trees to all sorts of causes.
Which really was to try and foster friendship between American and Japanese people. And I think that was probably his way of trying to gain acceptance of Japanese in America. As a young man, he was sick in bed a lot, and the thing that really gave him happiness being sick in bed was to be able to look out the window and see Mount Fuji and cherry blossoms kind of, framing Mount Fuji. It was just a very picturesque kind of thing that stayed with him throughout his life. If he had been conscripted into the army, he would have been sent to the Manchurian war front. And so his uncle said, there's no way you're going to survive, so you better go to America. So that's what he did. My aunt called him a draft dodger.
Once he was in business with a partner, which started just maybe 3 to 4 years after he arrived in the United States. So we're talking about 1907, 1908. Though the business was successful, Francis basically said, hey, I think that where the money's to be made is importing plants from Japan that they don't have here, and we can sell those at top dollar.
He left that after maybe 2 or 3 years. He had made enough money to sell his shares to his partner, and he started his own wholesale nursery.
And that's when Francis purchased 5 acres in Montebello and began Star Nurseries. He was a wholesaler. So what does that really mean? It means that he would raise the plants and he would wholesale the plants to gardeners or companies that would then turn around and sell those plants. He wouldn't be growing a few of this and a few of that. It would probably be 1,000 of this and 20,000 of that. And that's just the camellias. There were cherry trees, there were wisteria, there were rhododendron. In other words, it was a full-blown wholesale operation. He started out with 5 acres in Montebello, way back around 1910. 20 years later, he acquired 7 acres in Sierra Madre. And then eventually in 1940, he buys, this is really a step up, he buys 120 acres in Manhattan Beach.
He said he never had a bad year from 1910s to up to the war. He was actually a millionaire during the Depression.
A lot of times we tell stories about people and it sounds like they were an overnight success. Well, he was an overnight success, but there were 40 years of overnights. The magnitude of the injustice was so incredible. The experience that he had was similar to the experience that every Japanese who was put behind barbed wire had.
Constantly subjected to dust storms and bad living conditions.
75% lost everything, but everybody lost something. Right before the internment, he loses his youngest son, followed by, within a year and a half of leaving Manzanar, loses his oldest daughter. Really the span of about 4 years in total was an incredibly, difficult stretch. We did this to these people. In other words, if you can do this to 120,000 people, what else can you do? 120-acre Manhattan Beach estate is no more.
My mother, we used to take Sunday drives down, Pacific Coast Highway, and whenever we approached Manhattan Beach, my mother would say, I'm going to be sick, because she knew the huge loss to the family.
So right now, what is on where his land was? 2 entire school sites. There's commercial property, a church, streets, homes all over the place. 20 acres, just 20 acres a builder built 109 homes. That gives you an idea of the volume of land that Francis Uematsu owned and what could possibly be done with it.
And then eminent domain in Montebello, that's how the original nursery was lost, was through eminent domain by the Montebello School District. And so Grandpa actually has 2 properties that have high schools on them, which is kind of ironic. A lot of the varieties that my grandfather had created through hybridization, Grandpa had not named them yet. And so Bodie and several other people actually renamed them after their own family members. The thievery that was going on, not just of land, but people's life's work and people's creations.
When you begin to see not only what happened during the internment, but then you start to see that it was not fun and games for 50 or 60 or 70 years before that. We were doing everything we possibly could to keep the Japanese from succeeding. I like to say about Francis Uematsu is, when you look at what he was up against from the time he arrived in 1904 through his entire life, he succeeded against all odds. He handled everything that we threw at him and still succeeded and had a business until 1986. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
It was his dream to share the beauty of Japan's flowers, and in his own words, he wrote in an essay, "Standing as a memorial to the Issei, long after they are gone from this world and fulfilling their responsibility of beautifying this city." So I think that, shows pretty much where he was at, what he wanted to do with his life.